Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. As I say that, I'm always leaning in and checking out people's bookshelves if they have them. So just looking around at the wares in the background of the two folks that are joining me today. This is the creative team of Allan Liska and Ben Liska. Welcome to you both, and I hope I got your names right.
You absolutely did.
Got it in one.
Fantastic. All right, we try, we try. Now, you two know of a character, an archetype, a trope, we'll call the Green Archer. So I'm assuming that one of you is the Green Archer. Is this the case?
Sadly, neither one of us are the Green Archer. The Green
Ah,
Archer was a book written by Edgar Wallace in 1923 about and it was a pulp mystery suspense novel about an archer who was hung in 1487 and then stuck around to defend Gar Castle, or somebody pretended that he stuck around to defend Gar Castle for 500 years. I don't want to give away the plot of a 102-year-old book. Um,
hmm.
but uh, but I liked the story a lot, and I love that old school Edgar Wallace pulp kind of thing. So he became a little bit of our mascot. Plus, fun fact that you can pull out the next time you're at a party. Uh, in This was a best-selling book, and then in 1940 they made a movie serial based on the book, and it was the at the time the best-selling movie serial. And it's really interesting to see these kind of old school books, movies, whatever, that were so popular that have been kind of lost to time and forgotten about. But
Hmm.
um, that because the movie serial was so popular, the people at what would eventually become DC Comics went to Mort Weingartner and said, "Hey, we need an Arrow guy. Arrow guys are really popular right now." And that was the whole impetus for creating the Green Arrow.
Nice, nice. I can see the lineage. I can see the design elements and the pieces there. Yeah, yeah, very cool. Well, I'm a sucker for comics and pulp storytelling and anything along those lines. And I know that with Green Archer, you published a variety of comics. I believe you started with an anthology, and now you have a couple of titles like Johnny Dollar. And I know that there's a particular title that we're talking about on this episode that I won't spoil yet. But curious about what makes comics this place that allows you to pursue your storytelling passion.
You know, Ben and I have read comics for a lot of our lives. I think me a little bit long. Well, I'm older than Ben,
Yeah.
um, but also I think I started my comic reading journey a little bit earlier than him. Mostly because Ben still doesn't know how to read.
It's okay. It's okay. It's a safe space. It's okay.
Yeah. Um, and for me, it's just a natural form of storytelling. I'm not a filmmaker. I can write, but I love the visual kind of component to it. I can't write as well as Ben can, but I can write. Um, and I love that sort of combination of it and the particular challenges that go along with comics, because I tend to be very verbose, and comics are like, for lack of a better term, the Twitter of literature, in that
Hmm.
you can only get so many words in a panel, or unless you're Kevin Smith, then you can put all the words in a panel, but nobody ain't going to read that. Um, a- and so I like the challenge that comes with how do you take what you're trying to convey and convey it mostly visually with a minimal number of words. I don't know, Ben, why do you like comics?
Well, I like that as well. And I am kind of a movie guy. Like, I'm not as big a movie guy as some people, but I really enjoy movies. And some of those elements in animation, some of those elements translate into comics. So, if you have an idea for a scene in a comic, that can inspire the whole thing. Like there are in my anthology short that I did for Alan, and I have a funny story about how I got into that. Um, you know, I could see the opening scene in my head. I can't draw it to save my life, but I was like, okay, I know how this starts and I can build around that. Or I know how this ends and I can build around that. So it's kind of nice to see that happen. And honestly, as someone who does a lot of work in prose, it is really nice to be able to offload like 90% of the storytelling to the artist. Like, I'm like, yo, this
Mhm.
is, we're paying you a professional rate to go ahead and make this come to life. So thank you.
Nice, nice. So I will spoil the title that is upcoming unless either of you want to tell us about this character and what drew you to him before I mention the name. It starts with a buck.
So yeah, we are and I'm not sure when this is going to go live, but we currently have a campaign for Buck Rogers on Kickstarter right now. This is based on the pulp novellas written by Philip Nolan. So this is not although some of the strips themselves are now in the public domain, but the novellas are in the public domain. And so we kind of base the story on that. I am old enough that I grew up still reading the Buck Rogers comic strips in the paper before they
Mm.
kind of died out in the early 70s. But I think, Ben, your first exposure was the TV show, right?
Oh, for sure. Like, I didn't even know about the novellas or the comic strips until you said, hey, guess what we're doing? I was like, say what now?
And for me, going and learning the history of Buck Rogers and seeing how much literature, sci-fi literature, sci-fi movies, sci-fi TV shows owes its genesis to Buck Rogers is pretty amazing. The whole reason Flash Gordon exists was as an answer to Buck Rogers. And when George Lucas made Star Wars, he specifically called out the Buck Rogers and the Flash Gordon movie serials as I want to make Star Wars like this. Isaac Asimov had a lifelong love of Buck Rogers, as did Philip K. Dick, and so all of these creators were inspired by these two short stories that kind of spawned an empire. But kind of like the Green Archer now, a lot of people don't know who Buck Rogers is. People our age will have memories of the series, but
Hmm.
the younger generation doesn't even have that. So we wanted to hopefully reintroduce that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a wonderful mission, and I love pulling characters back that have been part of the mainstream and pulling some of those original pieces back to remind people. Any shout outs to the creative voices that are on the book? I know there's a range of talent that is part of the project.
Ben, anybody you want to call out specifically?
Well, getting to work with Chris was really great. Just seeing a different style. I'm used to, I kind of massage Alan's scripts when he sends them over. So working with a different author who has a different style, different voice, that was nice. And Chris really did a good job of conveying that classic Buck Rogers feel. So it was really just an absolute delight to work on.
Yeah, and I think that is, that was a really nice break. We came up with the concept of what we wanted to do because we couldn't quite tell the original story as you might expect from stories written in the 1920s. There was a whole lot of racism. There was some
Mhm.
amazing things in there. He talks about drone warfare, and he talks about video screens and stuff that didn't exist yet, or was you know very experimental. So there's some really cool sci-fi tech there, and then a whole lot of bad things that were like, okay, we're gonna scrap that part of it and tell the good parts. And so Ben and I kind of mocked up this framework, and then I wrote out the 10 pages, and then we reached out to Chris, and Chris knocked out the other 34 pages, continuing on the story that we had built.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to ask how the original pulp stories have informed the current work. Anything else that you'd like to add about that that wasn't mentioned from talking about the public domain novellas?
So one of the things that didn't inform the work, but was kind of surprising, Ben and Chris and I did a watch along of the 1939 movie serial
Mm-hmm.
for our Kickstarter followers and YouTube, on our YouTube channel, just as a way to, hey, I know not everybody's going to go read the novellas, but let's watch this movie serial because again, it's one of these forgotten things. People don't know what a movie serial is. And for your younger audience, a movie serial back in the 40s and 30s, 40s and 50s, the movie theaters wanted you to come back every week, and so you had your main feature, and then you had a movie that played before it, but they played it in 15-minute increments. That way you'd have to go back every week to find out what happened to Buck Rogers. It's actually where the term cliffhanger came from, because you'd end every 15 minutes of the serial, somebody's flying off a cliff or something like that, and are they going to get rescued next time? Um, and it was really funny to watch that because our story is basically uh, Buck Rogers wakes up 500 years in the future, and hackers have taken over the world. Like all of the scammers and criminals that do hacking now, they've become so powerful they basically can hold the whole world at extortion, and everybody has to do what they say. When we watched the movie serial, they switched it out from the original bad guys to racketeers, which are kind of like the hackers of the 1930s. Mob was very big and important in the 1930s. And so, it's the age of Al Capone and all these other people. And so racketeers would make a perfect set of criminals for Buck Rogers to have to fight against. And I was like, I am so glad we didn't watch the movie serial first because I'd hate for people to think that that informed what we were doing.
Nice, nice. There's a long lineage there, and you can sort of sort through the media in a way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Ben, anybody else that you want to call out?
Well, Mark's art was amazing. I thought it was absolutely. There are a couple of panels that just I was scrolling through, checking them, checking the versus the script, and I was like, oh, that's really good. And like again, when we went and we watched the serial, one of the things that the patrol in the future does is something that happens in our book. And I was like pointing at the screen, shouting, like, we do that, we do that. Sorry, I just hit the table and made my camera bounce. But it was really cool. Yeah, his art on it is fantastic. And the Alan started sending me the alternate covers he was doing. I was like, I worked on this book and I'm still going to back the thing. So I need all of those covers. So there we go.
Yeah, I mean, just an incredible array of artists, all of whom have a different take on the character, but all of whom love the character, and and that comes through in the art. We had one artist, Andy Clift. He's like, I would do this for free because I want to do a Buck Rogers thing so badly. And he drew this gorgeous retro like 1940s Buck Rogers feeling cover. Keith Williams, who's done Spider-Man and The Phantom, and is absolutely one of my favorite artists. One that I absolutely love. Did this amazing black and white color or cover that we also had colored in, and I'm like, I like them both so much. We're going to offer both because, again, Keith was like, yeah, I definitely want to do Buck Rogers because it's one that I haven't had a chance to do. But then even younger artists, Sarah Meyer is one that when we reached out to them, they're like, yeah, no, I would love to do a Buck Rogers because, I remember the series. I'm like, are you sure you remember this series? But that series meant a lot to a lot of people, even after its run, and so it was great to have the support of all these different artists that were super excited to pay homage to Buck Rogers in some way.
Yeah, big fan of Sarah's work, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, Sarah, we actually met Sarah. So Ben and I were tabling at a Comic-Con. I won't say which one, and it was a really bad Comic-Con for us. We were not making any
Uh,
money. And whenever that happens, like we didn't even make enough money to cover the chicken nuggets we had for lunch. Um, uh, and but whenever that happens, we start brainstorming about what our next comic should be because we've got the time, we're sitting next to each other, we can
yeah.
kind of kick off ideas. And that's where we came up with the idea for our Cryptid Hacker Force comic. And at the next con we did, Sarah was there. And so we approached them and said, "Hey, love your work." And I got they did a DuckTales cover that I got for Ben, and I'm like, "Love your work. How would you like to do a really weird comic idea that we have about a group of cryptid hackers whose job it is to cover up cryptid sightings?" And as somebody who's done covers for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, they're like, "Man, that's not even close to the weirdest thing I've done."
Yeah. Well, I have one more official question on the list, which is where can people find more information about the work? Is there anything that we've missed before we get to that point?
I don't know, Ben. What else should we be chatting about?
I don't know. I don't know what I'm allowed to talk about for future projects and things.
It's always
I,
a thing.
got the NDA signed. I don't want to get fired. It's, he's my boss, hard as nails, like just, but, we are planning to do a second Buck Rogers watch along, or possibly a Flash Gordon watch along, depending on how the votes go in the Comic Council, the senior management group for Green Archer Comics. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for that.
Yeah,
Cool,
yeah,
cool.
that'll be exciting. And yeah, definitely back the Kickstarter. We'd appreciate it. But as far as finding us, um, the our website is greenarcher.io, and you can find us on most social media platforms just under Green Archer Comics.
Sounds wonderful,
Yep.
and many thanks to you both.
Look for the logo.
Yeah, right.